As I get older, I become more closely, if vicariously, acquainted with death and disease. In fact, as time goes by, I find myself opening the obituary pages of the newspapers with increasing apprehension. But all the same, I don't find myself wondering where these departed friends, relatives or colleagues now are. Because as far as I'm concerned, they're nowhere. They have simply, or perhaps not quite so simply, ceased to be. So how about my own death, my own ceasing to be? Well, naturally I think about it because I'm much nearer to it now than I was. I think about how it will be. Will it be painful, for example? But still, I don't think about it in terms of, will I, after all I've committed myself to, be shown to be a fool by waking up somewhere else and finding that there is something after all? And will my face be red? The thought of death is constantly there. I know that it's unlikely now that I'll see my grandchildren get married, or that I'll even see or know my great-grandchildren. In other words, I have to loosen my hold over the future. What's more, I may be in a situation where death can't come too quickly because I'll be in pain, distressed, weak and disabled. I want to be able to reach for the bell and say, this is where I get off. I don't find it difficult to imagine not existing. I don't think about it at all, really. What I am frightened of is perhaps that near death there might be certain experiences associated with it which are painful and frightening, and from which one cannot escape for the moment. It's not the fear of death, but of the mental states that sometimes exist when things are falling to bits. I'm not looking forward to that. But I am encouraged by the fact that there are perfectly ordinary people who confront their forthcoming extinction with graceful equanimity, without having to fall back on unintelligible hopes for a future state. When I visited Gloria at St. Christopher's Hospice in London, she was quite happy to talk about her lack of faith. She only asked that we did not show her face, from which I alone could see that she approached her death with unexpected calm. Were you religious as a girl?
I suppose I did, Sunday school and the regular so-and-so, sort of looking at choir boys and...
That's not religion, that's flirty. But do you think that when you die, that you will continue to exist?
No. How can I explain?
But you don't foresee that you, Gloria, will somehow continue to exist?
No.
Do you regret that?
No, because I have something. I have something else. I want to come alive. I want to be alive again, even if it's for that bare second.
But not alive again after death?
No.
You mean alive just at that moment of death?
Yes.
What would that sudden terminal aliveness consist of? Would you be a young girl again, briefly, shortly, in that?
Oh, yes. I would be young again, but I would be all the things I wanted to be, and in that sudden brief moment I'd come to, and that's all there is to it.
And then it would be over?
Yeah.
So you're looking for a sort of ecstasy at the moment of death?
Yes. I'm looking for it, but I don't know whether I shall find it.
You're a very nice, brave lady. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Thank you. It's very, very good talking to you. It
Thank
really
you
is.
very-
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope the ecstasy comes and is really good.
Oh, so do I.
In spite of what the pious still prefer to believe, there is now an impressively large number of people prepared to contemplate their own mortality without the invisible means of support previously supplied by religion. And of course, to some extent, we all owe that to the pioneering efforts of the early Greek philosophers, not to mention to the often embattled thinkers of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and even to the social and political radicals of the last 100 years. Even if we don't explicitly recognize that pedigree, many of us now live in a secular world in which the various arguments for believing in a god or gods seem to have evaporated. As we've already seen, one of the most significant arguments in favor of the existence of an omniscient, omnipotent being was the apparent presence of intelligent design. But as we've also seen, Darwin's theory of evolution effectively annihilated what was perhaps the most dramatic evidence in favor of efficient intelligence and intention. What this has done, in effect, is to continue the process of painting religion into an increasingly small corner of reality. In fact, intelligence, which was once seen as the antecedent cause of all things, is in itself almost certainly a biological phenomenon. Far from being the initiator of things, we're now beginning to recognize that intelligence is a relatively late arrival in the universe. Like the limbs and organs, which until Darwin were visualized as the products of intelligent design, it's becoming increasingly likely that intelligence itself is the product of natural selection, inconceivable without the existence of a brain. Even the idea of the soul, which the faithful fondly visualize as the colonial outpost of an imperial power on high, will, I'm sure, shortly be explained as the autonomous product of local brain work. All the same, I have to admit that there is one aspect of our own mentality for which it's difficult as yet to foresee what type of explanation would even be relevant. I'm referring, of course, to consciousness. The point is that although I have no reason to believe that my consciousness is implemented by anything other than my brain, I remain convinced that there's something impenetrably mysterious about the relationship between brains and thoughts. And you can understand, therefore, why it's so hard to imagine, let alone tolerate, the idea that the death of the brain necessarily leads to the end of the personal self. And this, of course, is the trump card with which religion has consistently played. In the end, I think there must be some extent to which belief or disbelief is a purely temperamental affair, and that for reasons which are quite hard to identify, human beings have always sorted themselves out into those who visualize the universe in material terms and those who see it animated throughout by a supernatural intelligence. For that reason, I think it's a mistake to see a straightforward relationship between the recent retreat of religious faith and the concomitant advance of scientific knowledge. After all, a relatively small minority of the increasing number of disbelievers has any acquaintance with modern science at all. And then, on the other hand, there's a significant number of extremely accomplished and knowledgeable scientists who retain a strong religious belief notwithstanding. All the same, I do suspect that the Widespread, albeit patchily distributed disbelief in the modern world has something to do with science. But perhaps it's more to do with what science has provided in the way of security, convenience and comfort, and with the fact that although the general public is largely unacquainted with the theoretical basis of the immunities which they now so carelessly enjoy, the environment which science has created is so comfortable and so unthreatening that supernatural considerations have understandably weakened and faded. The consolations and assurances that were once provided by the Church now seem strangely anachronistic and unnecessary. So where am I at the beginning of a century, the end of which I certainly won't live to see, posthumously or otherwise? As I said at the outset, I'm reluctant to use the word atheist to describe my own unshakable disbelief. And that's not because I'm ashamed, afraid, or even embarrassed, but simply because it seems so self-evidently true to me that there is no God that giving that conviction a special title somehow dignifies what it denies. After all, we don't have a special word for people who don't believe in ghosts or witches. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean that I think it was scarcely worth bothering with a series of this length. On the contrary, there is a long history of atrocity committed in the name of religion, and an equally long history of truly heroic opposition. So in a sense, this series is, well, a tribute to those who have won for me and many others the right to stand up and be counted. But nowadays, there's another, and I think more important reason. In various parts of the world, religion has undergone a politically dangerous form of revival. Islam has undergone a widespread, though by no means universal, mutation. And the non-Muslim West is seriously threatened for the foreseeable future by swarms of these lethal mutants. But on the other hand, there is now an uncouth cabal of short-sighted Christian fundamentalists in the White House who have established a morbid and I think rather unhelpful liaison with the Israeli establishment, an alliance which only exacerbates the otherwise inexplicable suicidal reaction to be seen in Islam. So, one way or another, I think it's increasingly important for those of us who don't believe to establish an eloquent and, in all probability, completely ineffectual resistance.